What if the harder you try, the further it slips away? What if the moment you stop forcing is the moment everything starts falling into place? And what if real strength isn't in pushing harder but in knowing when to let go? There's something deeply mysterious about life. The more we chase it, the more it seems to run. The tighter we hold on, the faster it slips through our fingers. But then, something unexpected happens when we finally stop clenching, when we stop resisting and simply surrender, not in defeat, but in trust. Life begins to shift, not with chaos but with clarity, not with absence but with alignment. That's what this episode is about, the subtle power of surrender, not the kind that means giving up, but the kind that means giving in to the natural rhythm of life, to the flow that exists beneath the noise, to a kind of wisdom that often knows better than we do, even when we don't understand it. So what happens when we stop trying to control everything? What opens up when we loosen our grip and let life move at its own pace? Because maybe the very thing we've been chasing so hard is already on its way to us. If only we'd stop standing in its path. We all encounter this moment at some point. Maybe in our careers, maybe in love, maybe in the dreams we've carried. For years, we try everything, pushing, planning, working harder, staying up later, and yet, nothing moves, the doors stay shut. So we double down. We tighten our grip, convinced that more control equals more progress. But what if it's the opposite? What if all that effort is exactly what's blocking the flow? What if our grasp is the reason it's slipping? It's a strange truth. The more force we use, the more life seems to resist. And the more we resist that, the more exhausted we become. But eventually, maybe when we're drained, maybe when we've tried everything, we surrender. Not because we choose to, but because we have no other option. And in that space of quiet release, suddenly, things begin to move, without demand, without pressure. It's easy to mistake surrender for weakness, but true surrender, it's not passive. It's powerfully active openness. It doesn't mean letting go of your dreams, it means releasing your obsession with how and when they must unfold. There's a deep wisdom in that, a trust that life, like a river, knows how to reach the sea, not by fighting the terrain, but by flowing with it. Imagine a clenched fist. It's strong, but it can't receive anything. It's closed, rigid, consumed with holding on. Now imagine that same hand open, relaxed, ready to receive. That's the image of surrender. It's not about apathy, it's about release. It's about stepping out of the illusion that you must micromanage the entire universe to make your dreams come true. Take Sarah, for example, an artist who spent years chasing success. She did everything right: marketing, networking, staying endlessly productive. But her art felt empty. Her spirit felt drained. Until she finally stopped. She stopped pushing and started painting purely for the love of it. No strategy, no agenda, just honest expression. And that's when everything changed. A gallery owner discovered her work, drawn to its authenticity, and offered her a solo show. It was the breakthrough she'd been chasing for years. But it didn't come from effort. It came from release, from trusting the process, not controlling it. And maybe that's the real lesson here. We'll explore why surrender doesn't mean giving up. It means giving yourself back to the moment, with trust, openness, and the strength to let go. Earlier, we talked about letting go, not to give up, but to return to flow. That shift from gripping to trusting can feel subtle, but it changes everything. See, desire itself isn't the problem. Wanting something deeply is part of being human. The problem begins when that desire turns into control. When we start measuring our worth by how fast we get what we want, or how perfectly life matches our plans, we begin to disconnect from the natural rhythm of things. That's when we lose the flow. Surrender is the quiet practice of stepping back, not stepping away. It's choosing to trust that what's meant for us is already on its way. Not because we chase it harder, but because we've aligned ourselves with it. And no, surrender doesn't mean you stop taking action. You still show up. You still do the work. But your actions are now coming from clarity, not from desperation. From inspiration, not fear. That difference may seem small, but it transforms everything. Because surrender isn't passivity, it's intelligent participation. Like planting a seed, you prepare the soil, water it, give it sunlight, but you don't keep digging it up every day to see if it's growing. You let it be. You trust the process. So, pause and ask yourself, where in your life are you holding too tightly? What dream are you suffocating by gripping it so hard that it can't breathe? What part of your path are you forcing when you should be flowing? Maybe it's time to ease your grip. Maybe it's time to let go of your need to know exactly how it will all unfold. Because here's the truth. You don't need to know the full plan. You just need to listen, to act from alignment, to trust that surrender doesn't take you off the path it puts you on it. So if there's one shift you can make today, let it be this: move from pressure to presence. Let go not of your dream but of the timeline, the formula, the illusion of control, and just watch what begins to move when you do. But often, the real thing holding us back isn't the world around us. It's something quieter, more subtle, more personal. It's resistance. That invisible force that shows up right at the edge of something meaningful. The one that whispers doubts, amplifies fear, convinces us that staying safe is smarter than stepping forward. And most of the time, we don't even notice it. We just feel stuck, unmotivated, maybe even self-sabotaging, but calling it logic, resistance. Wears many masks. It looks like procrastination, sounds like your inner critic, feels like exhaustion only when you sit down to work on what matters most. Sometimes, it even disguises itself as productivity: cleaning the kitchen, replying to emails, doing everything except the one thing that calls to your heart. That's the trick of resistance. It hides in plain sight, pretending to protect you when in truth it's just keeping you small. But here's the insight that shifts everything. Resistance only shows up where something meaningful is trying to be born. It's not a sign of failure. It's a sign of potential. It's like bumping into a wall in the dark. That resistance tells you you're at the edge of something real. And instead of retreating, maybe the invitation is to pause, to get still, and ask yourself, what am I really afraid of? Because resistance almost always has the same root: fear. Fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of not being enough. It's the tug-of-war between the part of you that's ready to grow and the part that wants to stay. Safer will talk about how to face that fear, not with force, but with awareness, and how to move forward anyway. In the last section, we uncovered how resistance is often a mask for fear of failing, of being seen, of not being enough. But here's something just as important to understand: that inner friction isn't a flaw. It's a sign of life. It means something important is happening. Think of Adam, a writer with a big dream, publishing his first novel. He had the vision, he had the time, he even had the talent. But every time he sat down to write, anxiety kicked in. His mind flooded with what ifs. What if it's bad? What if no one reads it? What if I fail completely? So instead of writing, Adam did everything but write. He cleaned his apartment, reorganized his bookshelves, reread old drafts. He stayed busy, but far from the page. That's what resistance does. It disguises itself as useful action, but keeps you away from the thing that actually matters. Everything shifted for Adam when he stopped running from the fear and started listening to it, not as a weakness but as part of the process. He didn't banish resistance. He learned how to walk beside it. That's what surrender looks like when resistance shows up. Not overpowering, but recognizing and moving anyway. And here's what helps: kindness, curiosity, compassion. Instead of beating yourself up, I'm lazy, I'm undisciplined, try a gentler question. What is this resistance trying to protect me from? What belief is living beneath that fear? Maybe it's the idea that success will isolate you, That failure will expose you, or that trying and still not making it would hurt more than never trying at all. These beliefs feel heavy, but they're not permanent, and once we shine light on them, they begin to dissolve. Try this. Write a letter from your resistance. Let that voice speak freely. Let it say, "Don't do it. It's too risky. You're not ready." And then, write back, not to fight, but to reassure. Tell that voice, "I hear you, but I'm not here to stay stuck." Because yes, staying stuck is safe, but it's also suffocating. And deep down, you already know you weren't born for comfort. You were born to express, to create, to grow. And that means learning to dance with resistance, not letting it run the show. One powerful way to soften resistance is to shrink the scale. Big dreams feel overwhelming, so break them down. Don't write a book, just write one paragraph. Don't launch a business, just sketch one idea. Don't transform your whole life, just take one honest step. Resistance feeds on overwhelm, but presence dissolves it. And remember this, you're not broken because you feel resistance. You're human. Everyone who's done something meaningful has met this invisible weight. The difference: they didn't wait for it to vanish. They moved with it. They breathed through it. They trusted that just on the other side of fear is freedom. So today, instead of asking, "How do I make resistance disappear?" ask, "What truth is trying to surface underneath it?" Then, with compassion, take one step. Not to prove, not to push, but to reclaim your power. Not through force, but through surrender. Through the quiet, courageous act of moving forward, even when fear begs you not to. But often, right after resistance, comes something just as powerful: silence. Not the peaceful kind, the heavy kind. The kind that fills the air with doubt. Is this worth it? Am I doing something wrong? Should I keep going, or is this a sign to stop? And in that uncertainty, we often reach for the one thing that feels familiar: control. We'll explore what happens when uncertainty meets our need for control, and how surrender can offer something even stronger than certainty: trust. Previously, we explored how silence after resistance can feel like doubt, and how that doubt often drives us to grasp for control. But the truth is, life doesn't respond well to force, and maybe it never was meant to, because life doesn't follow our timelines. It doesn't always match our plans, and maybe that's not a flaw, it's by design. There's a much larger rhythm moving beneath the surface, one we can't always see. Yes, plans matter. Yes, effort is valuable, but they're not the full picture. There's something bigger at play. Call it the universe. Call it divine timing. Call it flow, grace, guidance, whatever name fits. The essence is the same. There's a force moving through your life that knows more than you do. And when you begin to trust it, something beautiful happens. Life starts falling into place in ways your plans could never predict. But trust isn't easy. It's not just about letting go mentally, it's about surrendering. Emotionally, it means being at peace with not knowing how everything will unfold. It means stepping forward even when you can't yet see the whole path. And that's hard, because the mind wants guarantees. It wants clear answers. But maybe the heart doesn't need certainty. Maybe what it needs is connection. Let's take Maya, for example. She spent years trying to figure it all out. Books, mentors, 5-year plans, countless job changes. Nothing clicked. Nothing felt aligned. Until one day, she stopped searching and started listening. Not to experts, not to trends, but to herself. She began noticing the small things that moved her, the moments that made her feel alive. It wasn't loud. It wasn't a lightning bolt moment, but it was real, quiet, steady, honest. And step by step, she followed that quiet voice, one decision at a time. A year later, Maya was in a career she hadn't planned for, doing work that felt deeply meaningful. Not because she forced it, but because she trusted the unfolding. That's what trust looks like in real life. It's not about passively waiting for signs from the sky. It's about being open to the unexpected. It's about tuning into the subtle nudges. It's about moving even without guarantees. And here's the truth. Just because things aren't going according to your plan, doesn't mean they're going wrong. Sometimes, not getting what you want is exactly what clears the way for what you need. But in order to see that, you have to let go of your grip on timing. You have to stop measuring your growth by someone else's clock. The universe doesn't care about your deadlines, it cares about your alignment. And when you're ready, deeply, quietly ready, life moves quickly. Not because you chased harder, but because you became the person ready to receive. Now, let's be clear, trust is not an excuse to sit back and wait. It's not passivity, it's presence. You still show up, you still do the work, but you do it from a different energy, a sense of partnership with life, not pressure, like a dancer who doesn't drag the rhythm, but moves with it. There's freedom in that. There's peace in realizing that life isn't working against you. It's not punishing you, it's shaping you. And the things that don't work out, they're not always rejections. Sometimes they're redirections. Closed doors that lead to better ones. Delays that prepare you for something greater. We'll explore how to recognize those detours, not as failures, but as invitations to trust even deeper, and keep walking anyway. In the last section, we explored the idea that some detours aren't rejections, they're redirections. But you only begin to see that when you stop forcing the narrative and start listening to the deeper rhythm underneath it all. So ask yourself honestly, where in my life have I been forcing outcomes? Where have I mistaken constant struggle for meaningful progress? And can I begin gently, intentionally to trust, not blindly, but consciously, trust that what's meant for me is already making its way? Because the moment you loosen your grip on the timeline, when you stop sprinting toward the future and begin moving in sync with something bigger than yourself, something starts to shift. And not just on the outside. You start to feel more grounded, more at ease, more you. That's the quiet magic of trust. It doesn't promise perfection, but it does make your life feel more real, more alive. And in a world overwhelmed by noise and pressure, that's more than enough. We've been taught that effort is the only way forward. That if we push harder, hustle more, outwork everyone, eventually, life will give in. That if we just keep grinding, success has to follow. But what if the real answer isn't more force, but more space? What if the shift we need isn't in doing more but in allowing more? There's a powerful difference between action driven by fear and action born from alignment. When fear is driving, we're rushing, we're controlling, we're clinging to results. We base our worth on outcomes. We look to the future to validate who we are now. It's exhausting, unsustainable. But when we act from alignment, there's a calmness to it, a quiet clarity. We're not chasing something outside ourselves. We're responding to something true within. Allowing doesn't mean apathy. It means choosing not to force things into place. It's the wisdom to know that not everything needs to be fixed right now. Some things simply need time. Some answers only come when the noise inside us finally quiets enough for us to hear them. But this idea of stepping back, it's hard, because we've been conditioned to equate control with success. We've been rewarded for pushing through, praised for making things happen. So allowing can feel like giving up, like weakness, like laziness. But it's not. Allowing is a discipline. It takes strength to hold space. It takes maturity to pause instead of push. It takes self-trust to wait with presence instead of reacting. In panic. To allow is to move with timing, not against it. It's not passive. It's deeply mindful. You're still present, still engaged, but you're no longer led by urgency. You're choosing presence over pressure, and there's a kind of power in that. Not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that commands respect. Not the kind that begs for validation, but the kind that radiates quiet confidence. And often, the solutions we chase so hard, they arrive not when we tighten our grip, but when we finally let go enough to listen. Think about how nature works. A seed doesn't become a tree overnight. It needs space, soil, stillness, time, sunlight. If we dig it up every day, we kill its growth. But when we allow the right conditions, it thrives. The same is true for our goals, our relationships, even our inner healing. They don't need more pressure. They need the right space. So maybe the better question isn't, what more can I do? Maybe it's, what can I let go of? Can you release the need to have all the answers right now? Can you stop trying to force solutions and let things unfold in their own time? Can you trust that your energy is more powerful when it's grounded in clarity than when it's scattered by control? Because in that space of allowing, something beautiful begins to grow. We'll explore what it means to create from that space, not with pressure or perfectionism, but from presence, alignment, and true connection. In the previous section, we explored what happens when we stop forcing life and start allowing it. How clarity, ease, and alignment often emerge not from effort, but from presence. When that shift happens, you begin to move with life, not against it. You stop chasing the noise and start listening to your own rhythm. And from that place where you're not pushing or forcing, things begin to align in surprising, almost effortless ways. Not because you tried harder, but because you finally got out of your own way. So take a deep breath, soften the urgency, let yourself be here fully. You don't need to force what's meant to flow. You don't need to chase what's already finding its way to you. Just allow it, trust it, and respond from presence, not panic. Because the things that are truly meant for you, they don't need to be forced. They just need space to arrive. But there's something else that often gets in the way, something subtler, something quieter. Expectations. They can be silent burdens we carry every day about who we should be, how fast we should grow, what success should look like. We rarely talk about them, but they shape the way we think. They distort how we see the world, and they often leave us disappointed, not because life failed us, but because life didn't follow the script we wrote in our heads. The problem, that script was never based on reality. It was built from fear, comparison, and the need for control. It's not that we simply want good things to happen. We want them to happen our way, on our timeline, with our conditions. And when they don't, we feel betrayed. But here's the truth. Expectations create tension, and tension blocks flow. Wanting something deeply isn't the issue. Desire is natural. Vision is powerful. But when desire hardens into rigid expectation, suffering begins. We tighten our focus, so much that we miss what life is trying to give us right outside that narrow frame. We stop being open to surprise, to mystery, to the beauty of not knowing. There's a quiet freedom in letting go of expectations, not because you don't care, but because you care enough to let things unfold in their own form. It's the maturity of showing up fully, giving your best and releasing your grip on what the result has to look like. That's not giving up, that's growing up. Think about how many times expectations have created unnecessary pain. You expected someone to react a certain way and they didn't. You expected to hit a goal by a specific date and you didn't. You reached a milestone and expected to feel fulfilled, but the feeling never came. In each case, the pain didn't come from what actually happened. It came from what you expected to happen. And that's the hidden cost. Expectations tie your peace to things you don't control. They make your joy conditional. And when life doesn't play along, you're left feeling broken. Not because you are broken, but because you built your inner world around a timeline or outcome that was never truly yours to control. So, what's the alternative? It's not apathy, it's not detachment, it's presence. It's being devoted to the process, not obsessed with the prize. It's choosing to show up every day, with love, with care, with vision, but without the weight of expectation dictating your worth. You can still plan, you can still dream big and work hard, but hold the vision lightly. Let it breathe, leave room for life to surprise you. We'll explore how that openness, letting go of rigid expectations, can actually unlock a more creative, more aligned, and more meaningful path forward. In the last section, we explored how loosening our grip on expectations creates room for presence, creativity, and peace. But here's the beautiful twist: often, the best things in life are the ones we never saw coming, and the only reason we recognize them is because we stop being blinded by what we thought should happen. So pause, gently, honestly. Ask yourself, what expectations am I still holding that no longer serve me? What stories have I written about how life should look by now? And more importantly, what would happen if I released them? Not to give up, not to fall behind, but to return to what's real. Because when you do, you'll feel it. A lightness, a spaciousness, a quiet calm, even in the middle of uncertainty. And from within that space, something powerful begins to move. Not outside you, but inside. A sense of freedom, a new clarity, a grounded confidence that no matter what happens, you'll meet it. Not with panic, not with pressure, but with open hands and an open heart. And that, more than any fixed outcome, is where peace truly lives. Stillness isn't empty. Silence isn't passive. In fact, some of the most powerful shifts in life happen in the quiet, in the in-between, when we stop doing, stop controlling, stop chasing. But here's the problem: we rarely make space for stillness. We treat it like a pause between real life. We label it unproductive. We fill every gap with noise. But the truth is, stillness is where we reconnect with ourselves, with our breath, with something deeper than thought. At its core, meditation isn't about escaping life. It's about meeting it completely honestly. It's the space where we practice surrender, not as some dramatic gesture, but as a simple return to presence, to breath, to now. To what is, without judgment, without resistance. Because whether we realize it or not, we often carry tension everywhere. In our minds, in our bodies, in the way we move through life with constant, subtle urgency. Meditation helps us see that. It slows us down just enough to notice the noise we've been living in. And when we notice it, we loosen its grip. Now, you don't have to be a monk. You don't need hours of silence or the perfect background music. Just a few minutes of intentional awareness can shift your entire day. Sit quietly, close your eyes, feel your breath moving in and out. No need to change it. Just observe it. Thoughts will come, of course they will, but instead of following them, just notice them. Let them pass like clouds in the sky. This isn't about stopping your thoughts. It's about no longer being dragged around by them. And over time, you'll begin to feel something deeper. A kind of quiet that isn't empty but full of presence, full of life, full of knowing. And in that stillness, surrender doesn't feel forced. It feels natural. Because you're no longer trapped in what should be. You're anchored in what is. Meditation isn't the only path to this, but it's one of the most direct. It trains the mind to release control. It teaches the nervous system to soften. It gives the heart the space to feel again, without fear. And from that space, new insight begins to rise, not from struggle, but from connection. Because the world is loud, our minds are louder. But deep within you, there's a space untouched by all of it. A space of peace, of presence, of quiet power. And when you return to that space, even for a few minutes each day, your entire relationship with life begins to change. You stop reacting. We'll explore what it means to live from that stillness, not just in meditation, but in everyday moments, even in the middle of life's noise. Previously, we explored how stillness reconnects us with presence, how just a few quiet moments can shift your entire state of being. And once you touch that space within, something begins to change. You stop reacting from fear. You start responding with intention. You no longer feel the urge to fix everything. You begin to trust that some things are simply meant to be as they are. This is the true essence of surrender. Not just a mindset, but a practice. A grounded, Daily return to yourself, not the version of you weighed down by expectations or chasing outcomes, but the version of you that simply is, the you that watches, breathes, allows. So ask yourself this, gently, can I give myself 5 minutes today, just 5, to be still, not to solve a problem, not to check off a task, but to simply be here with what is? Because the more often you return to that space, the more natural surrender becomes, not as an idea but as a way of living. And when surrender becomes a habit, life no longer feels like something you need to manage. It becomes something you're in relationship with, something you flow with, one breath at a time. But here's where the challenge comes in. We've been taught that control equals strength, that the more in control we are, the more powerful we'll feel. So we micromanage our time. We obsess over results. We cling to routines like they're lifelines. But most of our desire for control doesn't come from power. It comes from fear. Fear of uncertainty, fear of failure, fear of the unknown. And the more we try to dominate life, the more disconnected we become from its natural rhythm. The irony is sharp. The tighter we hold on, the more things slip away. Control offers the illusion of safety, but what it really gives us is tension, anxiety, and exhaustion. The constant burden of needing everything to go exactly as planned. And when it doesn't, we fall apart, we doubt ourselves, we confuse unpredictability with failure. But here's the question, did we really fail? Or did we just believe wrongly that we were ever in full control? Surrender challenges that belief. It invites us to redefine what real power actually looks like, not the kind of power that pushes and forces, but the kind that flows, not the kind that dominates, but the kind that adapts. True power is quiet, it's rooted. It doesn't scream or need to prove anything, it simply trusts its capacity to respond. The shift, this move from control to surrender, is radical, because it requires unlearning so much of what we were taught. We were told that if we didn't plan, prepare, and predict, everything would collapse. But life isn't a machine. It's a living process. And processes don't respond well to force. They respond to presence, to awareness, to alignment. To surrender the need for control isn't giving up responsibility. It's shifting your focus from trying to force outcomes to choosing how you meet them, from the mindset of I must make this happen to I will meet whatever happens with clarity and intention. And that shift, it changes everything. Your stress levels, your relationship with failure, your entire sense of self-worth. You stop internalizing every challenge as a personal defeat. You start seeing each moment as an opportunity to listen, to adjust, to grow. Control is rigid. Surrender is responsive. And responsiveness is what life keeps asking of us. This doesn't mean you stop making plans. It doesn't mean you give up on your goals. But it does mean you stop tying your identity to outcomes. We'll explore how this shift, this responsive way of living, can help you move through uncertainty with more clarity, resilience, and peace. Earlier, we explored the power of letting go, the radical shift from needing to control everything to learning how to respond with calm and clarity. And from that place, a deeper truth begins to unfold. You realize that you are not your results. You are not your productivity. You are not the sum of the tasks you've completed or the goals you've hit. You are the awareness behind all of it, the one who can pause, choose again, adjust, and keep moving without the weight of perfectionism dragging you down. So take a breath. Look at your life with fresh eyes. Where is control running the show? Where are you gripping so tightly that you've lost your ease, your joy? Have your routines become rigid cages instead of supportive containers? Can you soften even just a little? Can you trust that not everything needs to be micromanaged down to the last detail? Because here's the surprising truth. In that softening, you don't lose power, you gain freedom. You gain the ability to pivot, to adapt, to move with life, instead of constantly fighting against it. That's where real resilience lies. Not in controlling every outcome, but in knowing that you don't have to. That's strength, the kind that bends without breaking, the kind that listens before reacting, the kind that doesn't conquer life, but collaborates with it. And when you begin living in partnership with life, something amazing happens. The need for control fades, and in its place comes something much deeper: wisdom, trust, quiet confidence, the knowing that whatever comes, you can meet it fully, gently, bravely. And here's a paradox we rarely talk about. The moment you stop needing something is often the moment it starts to appear. Not because life is playing some cruel game, but because letting go changes your energy. It shifts your attention from scarcity to presence, from grasping to receiving. And in that shift, you make space. Space for clarity, space for people, space for opportunities to flow in unexpected and unforced. You try, you push, you chase, and still nothing moves. Then suddenly, in one moment of quiet surrender, when you let go of your attachment to the outcome, things begin to unfold. That's not a coincidence. That's alignment. Not because you gave up, but because you gave in, into timing, into trust, into the deeper current of life. But to really understand that shift, we have to ask something more vulnerable. Why do we want what we want so badly? Is it because we believe it will finally make us enough, safe, whole, loved? So much of our striving doesn't come from true inspiration. It comes from the belief that we're incomplete without the very thing we're chasing. And that belief, it creates pressure. It whispers, until this happens, I cannot rest, I cannot be at peace. But surrender breaks that loop. It says, I can want something deeply and still be whole now. I can pursue something meaningful and still be at peace. It separates desire from desperation, and that separation is where true freedom begins. This doesn't mean you stop dreaming. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It means your goals no longer own you. You show up, you do the work, you take the steps, but you stop gripping the outcome as if your worth depends on it. You stop measuring your self-value based on whether things go your way, and you begin to realize how you live matters more than what you achieve. This paradox that letting go often brings more is not a trick. It's a principle, a rhythm rooted in how life moves. Force creates resistance, openness creates flow, and in the next part, we'll explore how living in that flow doesn't just shift your external results. It transforms your inner world in ways far more powerful and lasting. As we just explored, when you loosen your grip, you return fully to the present moment, and from that grounded space, everything begins to shift. You start making better decisions. You see more clearly. You move with intention, not noise. Think for a second about how do you show up when you're calm and centered, when you're not clinging to outcomes, when you're not trying to force a result just to feel okay. Your energy feels different, doesn't it? There's a quiet steadiness in you, a presence that doesn't just calm you, it draws others in. You stop pushing people or opportunities away with tension. You start inviting them with authenticity. And even when things don't unfold the way you hoped, you don't collapse, you don't spiral, because you're not attached to a specific outcome anymore. You're committed to something deeper: truth, growth, and showing up with integrity, no matter what the external world throws at you. That is the power of surrender. It doesn't just give you peace, it gives you your life back, not as some reward for letting go, but as the natural result of being fully here, of no longer postponing peace until conditions are perfect. So ask yourself, honestly, what am I gripping so tightly it's creating more tension than progress? What am I afraid will slip away if I stop chasing it so hard? And maybe the hardest one, what would it feel like to deeply want something without needing it to define me? That shift, it changes everything. It doesn't take away your passion. It doesn't dull your ambition. It grounds them. It reminds you that you're already enough. That life is not something to conquer but something to align with. And when you start living from that space, free, focused, And fully present, what's truly meant for you often finds its way to your door. Not because you demanded it, but because you were finally ready to receive it. Nowhere is this more evident than in our relationships. Because relationships, especially the close ones, are some of the most powerful mirrors for our need to control. Without even realizing it, we try to shape others into who we think we need them to be. We want them to respond the way we would, to love us in the way we define love, to meet our needs without having to ask. And when they don't, frustration shows up. So we begin managing, correcting, pressuring, not always from a place of harm but often from a place of fear. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of rejection, fear of losing connection. But surrender teaches something far more liberating. Love is not control. It's not about shaping someone to fit your comfort zone. It's about letting them be fully themselves, even when that challenges your assumptions, even when it confronts your insecurities. Surrender in relationships doesn't mean silence. It doesn't mean avoidance. It means releasing the illusion that connection requires control. Because real connection doesn't grow under pressure, it thrives in freedom. The more you try to control how someone shows up, the more distance you create. The more you try to secure emotional safety through control, the more unstable the relationship becomes. People need space. Space to be real, to evolve, to breathe. And that space only exists when you're willing to surrender your assumptions about who they should be. Now, to be clear, surrender doesn't mean you tolerate dysfunction. It doesn't mean you stay silent in the face of harm. It's not about settling. It's about knowing the difference between expressing your needs and controlling the outcome, between holding someone accountable and trying to rewrite their personality, between loving someone as they are and resenting them for not becoming who you imagined they would be. There's a strange, unexpected beauty in letting go of the script we've written for others. We'll explore how surrender in love doesn't weaken relationships, it transforms them into something far more authentic, alive, and lasting. Previously, we explored what happens when you stop trying to control others in your relationships, when you release the need to shape someone into a version of your expectations. And from that release, something surprising begins to grow. Because true connection doesn't come from pressure, it comes from presence. It begins the moment you choose to meet someone as they are today, not who you hope they'll become tomorrow. That doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you start listening more deeply. You soften. You stop reacting. And in that softening, something beautiful unfolds. Understanding. Suddenly, communication gets easier. Conflicts become less about blame and more about clarity. You stop trying to win the conversation, and you start trying to connect. And that connection born out of surrender is more fulfilling than anything control could have created. Because now it's real. It's not based on conditions, expectations, or performance. It's grounded in presence. You show up, they show up, not perfectly, but honestly. So pause for a moment. Reflect. Where in your relationships are you holding too tightly? Where are you trying to control the narrative out of fear of loss, of being misunderstood, of not being enough? And what might shift if you let go, not of the person, but of the pressure? The answer might feel uncomfortable, but within that discomfort is your freedom. Freedom to feel what's actually true. Freedom to relate without armor. Freedom to love without clinging. And when do people meet from that space? When both are grounded in their own wholeness, not trying to fix or possess each other. Something sacred happens, not because they control one another, but because they choose to honor one another, moment by moment. That is the quiet strength of surrendered love. It doesn't seek to possess, it seeks to understand. And in that understanding, it discovers a deeper kind of intimacy, one built not on power, but on presence. And that brings us to a bigger truth, one we often overlook: the present moment. We're so busy chasing what's next, regretting what's past, or managing what could go wrong, that we miss the only place life is actually happening: here, now. This is the only space where joy is possible, where clarity lives, where love and transformation begin. But living in the now requires something we've been conditioned to resist: surrendering our mental escape routes. We don't always do it consciously, but we escape in subtle ways: endless to-do lists, constant planning, replaying old conversations, worrying about outcomes that haven't happened. Our minds rush ahead, convinced that the next moment will finally be enough. But here's the truth: the next moment is just another now. And if we don't learn to live in this one, we'll miss all the others too. Surrendering to the now doesn't mean we stop dreaming or preparing. It means we stop resisting what already is. We meet life not with judgment or control, but with presence. We let the moment be enough, not perfect, not polished, just enough. And there's a quiet power in that. When we drop into the present, something inside us relaxes. The noise begins to fade. Our breath deepens. Our vision sharpens. We realize most of our suffering didn't come from the moment itself. It came from our resistance to entering it. The now is where your strength lives. It's where your insight, your calm, your clarity waits for you. When you're truly here, fully grounded, you respond more wisely. You connect more honestly. You create more authentically. You're no longer pulled in 100 directions by what-ifs and should-haves. You're rooted. And when you're rooted, life stops feeling so chaotic. Not because the world changes, but because you're no longer scattered across imaginary timelines. We'll explore how this grounded presence becomes a foundation not just for peace but for real, empowered action. In the last section, we explored how the present moment is where life truly happens. How returning to now roots you in calm, clarity, and authenticity. And once you learn to live from that space, you begin to come home to yourself. That's what surrender really offers. It brings you back not to perfection, but to presence. You've returned to your center. Now, let's be honest, this doesn't mean the present moment is always peaceful. Sometimes it's messy, sometimes it's painful, sometimes it's full of uncertainty. But even in the middle of all that, there's still something steady beneath it. A stillness, a quiet knowing, a presence that doesn't waver. And the more often you come back to that space, especially when things get chaotic, the more resilient you become. Because we often fall into the habit of waiting for things to change, waiting for the perfect job, the right relationship, the next milestone, so we can finally feel okay. But here's the truth: peace doesn't come from having a perfect life. It comes from being fully alive in the one you already have. And that begins by surrendering a common mental habit, the habit of postponing presence, of saying things like, "I'll feel at peace when," or "I'll be happy once." Instead, you shift into something more powerful. I choose to show up now, because now is where everything begins. Every moment of insight, every breakthrough, every spark of creativity, every act of courage or connection, it all starts here. When you surrender to this moment, not because it's perfect, but because it's real, you begin to move through life with more grace, more clarity, and more strength than you ever thought possible. So ask yourself, gently and honestly, where are you right now? Not your body, but your attention, your emotion, your energy. Are you here, or are you lost in a future you can't predict, or stuck in a past you can't rewrite? If you've drifted, come back. Come back to the breath, to the rhythm in your chest, to the weight of your body grounding you here. Come back to what's real, because this moment just as it is isn't something to rush through. It's something to live. And when you live it fully, something shifts inside. You realize that surrender isn't just about letting go of control. It's about coming home, to yourself, to this breath, to now. So much of what we're chasing, peace, clarity, connection, purpose, it's already within reach. We miss it, not because it's far away, but because we're moving too fast to notice. We're gripping too tightly, trying too hard to force life into a shape it was never meant to take. But here's what we forget in all that effort: surrender isn't giving up, it's tuning in. It's remembering what matters, It's slowing down enough to receive what's already here. And in the final part of this journey, we'll explore how to carry that awareness forward, how to walk through life rooted, awake, and fully alive. In the last part, we remembered that surrender isn't giving up, it's tuning in. It's a return to presence, to the now, to yourself. And from that place of awareness, something powerful becomes clear. It's not about meeting life where you wish it was. It's about meeting life exactly where it is. It's about trusting that you don't have to carry everything on your own. That control is not the key to freedom, presence is. That chasing outcomes may bring short-term wins, but only surrender brings lasting alignment. And that kind of alignment, it doesn't just change what you experience, it changes who you are while you're experiencing it. So maybe the real question isn't, what do I need to make happen today? But rather, what am I being asked to let go of? What outdated beliefs are still shaping your choices? What expectations are robbing your peace? What forms of control are you gripping so tightly that joy can't get through? And what might happen if you loosened your grip, slowed your pace, and simply allowed life to meet you exactly where you are? This isn't a concept to admire from a distance. It's a practice, a path, a way of showing up in the world that's grounded, honest, and deeply courageous. Because yes, it takes courage to stop pushing. It takes strength to be still. It takes real trust to believe that what's meant for you will never need to be forced. So as you step back into your day, carry this truth with you. Surrender is not the end of effort. It's the beginning of true power. The kind of power that moves with life, not against it. That doesn't demand but invites. That doesn't control but collaborates. That doesn't panic but trusts. Start there. Start now, one breath at a time, one moment at a time. Surrender, not because you're weak, but because you're finally ready to live from your deepest strength. And if this journey stirred something in you, share it. Reflect on it. Revisit it when you forget. Because surrender isn't something we master once. It's something we remember again and again, every time life whispers, let go. If this message found a home in you today, consider subscribing, leaving a comment, or sharing it with someone who's navigating their own season of letting go. Sometimes, a quiet reminder is all it takes to return to what matters. Until next time, stay grounded, stay open, and above all, stay present. I'll see you in the next episode.